without further ado, Michael.
Good afternoon. How's everyone doing? So, I am from New Jersey. Don't hold that against me. Wasn't my fault. My parents picked New Jersey. They could have picked Michigan, you know what I'm saying? They picked New Jersey. But I was born in Ireland. I moved to America when I was 3. I could do this whole thing in my brogue, but I got married, so I don't use the brogue anymore. That was a lot funnier in my head. I traveled the country. I was on the road 327 days last year. I know that because my wife keeps track of it. Every January 1st, she sits down and lets me know how many days the previous year I was away from home. And she's on a mission too. We're both traveling. We're both trying to solve this problem. We're just one little piece in this big cog, and we need a community-based approach. Everyone has to come together. But in this public social health crisis of addiction, the addiction pandemic, as I call it in America, we're so siloed and splintered, and everyone is not on the same page. And so my main mission in life is prevention. I want to go to middle schools and high schools across the country and talk to kids about really not getting involved in drugs in the first place. But wherever I go, I want to volunteer to go into the prisons, the jails, the treatment centers, and talk to people who are struggling with addiction. My wife and I put about 5,000 people into treatment for the last 7 to 8 years, and I'm on a mission. So there's a lot of things I wanted to share with you, but it seems like the videos are dragging. I don't know if the videos will work. But as I said, we need a community-based approach. If we don't have this community-based approach, if we don't take this village, approach seriously, you're going to see pandemic numbers. We're already seeing the overdose numbers, 65 to 70,000 overdose deaths last year from opioids and heroin. That's one piece of the problem. Number one cause of accidental death in Michigan is a drug overdose. In New Jersey, number one cause of accidental death is a drug overdose. 50 states. But heroin and opioids is one piece of the problem, and it's going to get worse, okay? And I know and appreciate where I am, and the pharmaceutical industry is really not trying to solve the problem. We are in this opioid pandemic and heroin pandemic because of opiate medications, okay? And so I'll explain a little bit of that. I think it's really important to understand the chemical solution to the spiritual problem. And I think what we're doing is we're looking for the answer in a pill. And kids, it's affecting kids. And then most of the problem I'm seeing between the ages of 18 and 27 with addiction. 3 out of 4 people that are struggling with heroin or died of a heroin overdose abused an opioid medication first. They were prescribed an opiate from a dentist or a doctor. So 3 out of 4 of the entry into heroin began with opiate pain medication. But 90 to 100% of every person I've talked to, interviewed, sat down with, visited at a jail or a treatment center, had 3 things in common. And that's what really I'm dealing with my main mission, is kids, nicotine, tobacco, alcohol, and marijuana. Now, I'm watching Michigan pretty closely. Michigan's done some good things. Governor just signed a prescription drug monitoring program, limited opioid medication in the state of Michigan. Okay, that's fantastic. Too bad it's 10 years too late, okay? It's 10 years too late. This should have been done 10 years ago. There's some states that just passed, just in the last 60 days, just passed Narcan legislation and Good Samaritan laws. A lot of good things are happening right now, but how many people have lost their life before these good things happen? So now, what I saw in 2007, I'm seeing again with different drugs. I spent 12 years in prison. Anybody want to leave now? I was released from prison in 2007. I wish I had time to get into my whole story, but I was running vice president of sales and marketing for a multi-million-dollar corporation in Charlotte, North Carolina called American Messenger Services. We were the 9th fastest growing privately held company in America. The year I left because of my addiction, and I say left pretty, the year I was fired and let go and eliminated because of my addiction, we did $42 million. I was making more money than I could spend. I had a 5,400 square foot house with a pole barn with 6 collector cars in it, the 2-seat furniture from attic to basement. I was living the dream. And drugs destroyed my life. And I put $3 million of heroin and cocaine in my arms. And I ended up in prison for 5 years. I came out of prison in 2000. And within 10 months, I was in a violent car accident. And I was rushed to the hospital with a broken neck. I had 3 cracked vertebrae, 3, 5, and 6 vertebrae, and my neck were cracked. I needed neck surgery. I had 5 millimeters of circumference in my spinal column. My hands and feet were going numb, and they set me up with the neurologist and the spinal surgeon the following week. But they wanted me out of the hospital, and so they put a neck brace on me and released me. And I walked out of the hospital with 7 different medications. And one of those medications was a hospital industrial-sized bottle of 360 80 milligram OxyContin. Now, that would never happen in 2018, 2017, but in 2000, OxyContin, they were Skittles. They were aspirin. And I walked out with a hospital bottle, 360. Now, I have a super high metabolizing rate of opioid medication. I found that out later on through pharmacogenetic testing and DNA. Opioids to me are like Skittles, okay? And so I ate that 360 bottle, 80 milligram Oxy in 1 week. And I got another bottle, which I ate in a week. And I got put on 7 different pain medications to see which one would work best for my pain. The doctor said to my wife, see which one would work best. He's eating too many Oxys. Now, my wife's a hairdresser, not a nurse practitioner, and so I don't know that she was the right person to determine which medications. I was on 3 benzodiazepines, a barbiturate, Seroquel to go to sleep, and the nurse brought in a box of 12 bottles of morphine liquid. Sent me home with a box of 12 bottles of morphine liquid, told my wife to give me a cup of morphine liquid between pain dosages. I was a pharmacological disaster, and you know what? I don't blame that doctor. Don't blame him. Don't blame that hospital. Don't blame him. I was a heroin addict, and I knew better. And I, within 7 days, had heroin and cocaine needles back in my arm, and I ended up going back to prison for 7 more years. You see, I knew my problem, but wouldn't face my problem. And drugs weren't my problem. Sounds like drugs were my problem, though, right? But see, my problems lie much deeper. Adverse childhood experiences, childhood trauma, the things in my life I never addressed. Drugs were a way I didn't have to deal with my problems for a couple of minutes at a time. And I became an out-of-control, full-blown doctor shopper. I was seeing 67 doctors a month. I was getting 9,000 opiates and 3,000 benzos per month. I used to walk into pharmacies and threw scripts down like they were playing cards. And I used to walk out with bags. The pharmacist would get me a bag to carry all my opioids. I had 10 and 12 opioid prescriptions per visit, okay, from 10 and 12 different doctors. I never had a pharmacist ask me a single question. The reason why we're in this pandemic in America is because our pharmaceutical industry, and with all due respect, our medical community, created this pandemic of prescription opioids. It's irrefutable. I know not everyone likes when I say that. I know some people don't like me. I'm the Donald Trump of addiction, okay? I'm the anti-politically correct person. I get it, okay? That's why my wife won't let me have a Twitter account. So she really won't. She's deleted it twice. I wish someone would delete the Donalds. But anyway, I respect my president because he's my president. So he's declared a public health emergency. He's declared an opioid emergency in America, and we do have one, but that's not the pandemic. That's not the problem. It's a piece of a bigger problem. So I only have 45 minutes left, and I don't want to keep. I'd love to keep it. Anybody will stay till 5:30 if I am. I have a lot I want to talk about. So most of these slides are available to you on my website. You'll have my card. My contact information. You can contact me anytime. You can go to my website and download the slides. You can use them as your own. I have tons of information. I'm obsessed. I'm a short sleeper. I only sleep 3 hours a day. It's the biggest waste of 3 hours every single day, but I try to at least get those 3. So I'm obsessed with research. I'm obsessed with information, and I try to get the best information that I can gather and put it all on my website. So my website is a real good portal to visit, but all the information I'm going to share with you and the stuff that I won't get through that I'll skim through is on the website. My book comes out next month. My story is horrendous. I wish I had the time to tell the whole story, but you'll have to buy the book. But it's the story of my addiction, my fall from a very successful entrepreneur, how I destroyed my family. And speaking of family, I like to always share just because I miss her so much too. But this is my redhead. Been married to that chick for 26 years. She's the coolest redhead you ever want to meet in your life. She's the coolest female you ever want to meet in your life. And I have no idea how I ended up with her, seriously. I married way up. I hit the lottery. And I've been married to her for 26 years. And 12 of those 26 years, that girl sat in a folding chair every Sunday for an hour, visiting me in a prison visit hall. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It ain't Brad Pitt up here, right? Why are you coming to see me? My daughter, Kayla Marie, my hero son, Corey, he did 6 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, and if I didn't have the God I serve, if I didn't have that redhead to raise those 2 kids while I was in the midst of my madness, because listen, it wasn't just 12 years, think about it. It was a lot of years of addiction that caused those 12 years in prison. So this amazing girl got married last year. I did everything I could to sabotage that wedding, everything I could, but it went through anyway. My 2 little munchkins, my son has 2 little granddaughter twins, and my oldest granddaughter Aniston, and my grandson Wyatt, and then Kayla and Josh just had a new baby, Hunter. These kids are growing up in a world that I'm scared to death of where we're going, and marijuana legalization is a big part of that fear. The pharmaceutical that I call Pharmageddon is a big part of that deal, and I'm scared. So I suffered from the disease of it can't happen to meism, okay? And there's a lot of families that suffer from this disease. That ain't gonna happen to me, that won't be my story. Now my mom didn't raise a heroin addict, okay? I became one on my own. And so in respect of time, I wanna share that alcohol use and abuse and the reduction in the perception of harm of marijuana by youth, coupled with this prescription drug overprescribing practices, misuse and abuse, has led to the increase and the addiction of all drug use by youth and young adults, especially heroin. Now, everything is changing with heroin. I would have came up with a longer title, but I ran out of room. Why am I having such a long title? Because this is a very complicated issue. And I'm telling you, I can't tell you it's prescription drugs. I can't tell you it's marijuana. I can't tell you it's adolescent use of alcohol. I can't tell you it's opioids. It's all of the above, okay? So like I said, the slides are all available to you. And we're not talking enough about this. We have to talk about this problem. Remember when we were growing up and we had the drug talk with the kids, right? And the parents had the drug talk? It's not the talk anymore. It's an ongoing conversation. And we have to talk about it on an ongoing basis. We have to talk about it all the time. And I wish you didn't have to learn so much about what's happening today, but you really do. Because your kids are scientists when it comes to this stuff. Now, families who eat dinner infrequently, frequently with their kids are much less likely to see themselves underage drinking and using drugs. And families who infrequently eat with their kids are much more likely to see themselves underage drinking and using drugs. Why is that? Because teenagers need, and 8, 9, 10-year-olds need to hear the truth about this from their families, from their parents and guardians, because they're not hearing the truth from their peers. So I came up with this thing called drugs over dinner. I want parents to talk to their kids about drugs over dinner. I did this big billboard campaign. I put stickers on pizza boxes all over 17 states. I went on the Dr. Oz show. This guy came up with a thing called drugs over dinner. And I'm saying parents got to talk to their kids about drugs over dinner. But as I was thinking about it, I don't just want you to talk to kids about drugs, because drugs aren't the problem. It's what's lying underneath the drugs, right? And the naivety about drugs. So I want you to have more than one discussion. So every prevention organization in the country says to eat dinner with your kids 5 nights a week. That's the gold standard. Now, I don't know too many parents who can eat dinner with their kids 5 nights a week, to tell you the truth. I don't know a single one, right? So I said to my wife, I'm going to have booze over breakfast, drugs over dinner. And so my wife, she's a smart redhead. She goes, no, you're not, you idiot. Call it table talks. And I'm like, what do you mean? Hey, listen, maybe it's at the coffee table. Maybe it's at the picnic table. Maybe it's at the lunch table. You can't tell parents to have 5 conversations at dinner, have 5 conversations around the table, and then give them one dashboard conversation. Maybe it's 1 conversation in the car and it's 4 at home. It can't just be on the run. It has to be a conversation. And now what are parents supposed to talk about? Parents don't know what to say. Every prevention organization in this country recommends the family dinner time. I'm advocating for the family conversation time. But what are you supposed to talk about? If I got up here in front of you and said shatter and wax and butter and strawberry quick and triple C's and robo tripping and beanies and OCs, and would you know what the heck I was talking about? Vaping and juuling and soaring, would you know what I was talking about? Well, your kids know, so you need to know. So I came up with 260 conversations, 5 a week for 52 weeks of the year. I came up with these real cute, no, let me tell the truth. My wife came up with these real cute 104 family field trips for the weekend. They're really cool, they're simple, and you would have thought of all of them, but we just sat down and put them all together. And then we came up with this thing called Table Talks. And on this thing, it's on my website. We just put it into a book form, which was phenomenal. A book, remember, had 2 hardcovers and pages in the middle. The books, remember books? You know, there's these buildings called libraries, and they have some of them, right? Books. My wife says, no, put it on an app. I said, no, I'm trying to get away from this stupid app. I want the electronic devices put away and parents actually have conversations. So I put it in a book. You could buy the whole book on Amazon. We have a big book. We have a little book called Table Talk Appetizers. It's really cool. They're $12 or something like that. But all of it's on our website anyway. So you can download everything off of our website. It's called Table Talks. It will give you 260 conversations. It will give you 104 family field trips with conversations. 1 conversation for every day of the year. Are you going to have 365 conversations? No, but you pick from 365 conversations, but try to have 5 a week. And it's going to give you a lot of information. My best friend lost his 22-year-old daughter, Amber, to a heroin overdose about 7 years ago, 2010. She was a 3rd-year student at Drexel University, and she had straight A's. And I know a lot about addiction. Okay, I know a lot about drugs, a lot about crime, a lot about criminal activity, a lot about gangs. I'm an expert in that area. If I listened to my mother, I would have been an expert in something else. But I didn't listen to my mother because she didn't know anything, that lady. And then I found out pretty quickly she actually knew everything. If I shut my mouth and listened to my mother, I would have been a pastor. I would have been something else. I wouldn't have been a drug addict and a criminal and an ex-convict. So anyway, I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that a 22-year-old girl, Amber, I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that a 3rd-year student at Drexel University that got straight A's overdosed in her dorm of heroin. I just couldn't wrap my head around it. So I decided to go back to school to become a drug counselor. And I got my CADC in New Jersey, and I had a caseload of 26 kids. I saw each one for 1 hour of individual sessions every week, 26 hours a week. And in the span of 10 days, less than a year into my hours, I lost 4 kids to an overdose of heroin. I lost an 18-year-old girl named Ashley, a 19-year-old boy named Mark, a 22-year-old girl named Samantha, and a 23-year-old boy named Brandon. 4 kids dead in 10 days. I went to 4 addictions funerals in 12 days. All 4 kids, 2-parent households. All 4 kids, 3-letter varsity athletes. All 4 kids, honor roll students, 3 in college on scholarships, kicked out of college because of their addiction. Ashley died the July after her graduation from high school. She had a full ride to Temple University and never even made it. So 4 kids dead of heroin, fentanyl-laced heroin, inside of 10 days of each other. And I said, man. So I made a documentary about it, and I brought one for everybody, okay? Kids are dying. I'm a 501c3 nonprofit organization. If anybody feels compelled, they want to make a donation to Steered Straight, the address is on there. I'm trying to put these in the hands of as many people as possible. I took my camera equipment, I went down into Camden, New Jersey, and I interviewed 137 kids homeless on the streets of Camden. Camden's a little like the worst section of Detroit you could ever, find yourself in accidentally, okay? It's a crime and gang-infested, poverty-stricken, hopeless city full of the most beautiful people you ever meet in your life. But the city is degraded. It's just terrible. I interviewed 137 kids on the streets of Camden. 126 of them were female. Now, addiction, as most of you in this room in the medical field probably know, addiction is 70% male in America. Well, it wasn't my experience, but I was on the city streets of Camden, and this was all being driven by prostitution. That's why there was so many females. Not one of them was from Camden. None of them were from that city. They lived in the suburbs in rural America of New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware, and they found themselves homeless, living in abandoned houses on the city streets of Camden. So 121 of them, 88%, abused opioid medications prior to getting themselves on heroin. So I found it to be 88% in that city, but the accepted number across the country is 75%. Some people say 8 out of 10 heroin addicts begin with an opiate. So 75, 80, I found it to be 88% in my study, 137 kids. Opiates have their place, you know? They have their place, but they're out of place right now, and we're not addressing it like we should be. So 88% of my kids, 121 out of 137, abused an opioid medication prior to finding themselves on heroin. But what I found compelling and what's driven this mission is that 100% of the kids had 3 things in common. Every single one of them used tobacco or nicotine, vape, because vaping is the new safe way to smoke cigarettes in America, you know what I'm saying? Every single one of them drank alcohol underage, and every single one of them used marijuana, 100%. I call it the trifecta gateway: alcohol, marijuana, and nicotine. Now, I've been screaming about this since 2011. When I produced the film, I've been screaming about it. And I've been called Chicken Little, I'm an alarmist, the New York Times called me an alarmist. I'm running around the country telling everybody that the sky is falling. Okay. These are some scenes from Kids Are Dying. This is the first girl I met on the streets of Camden. She's a salutatorian from her school that she graduated high school. She dropped out of college. She was living in this abandoned house. When I went and interviewed her mother and her sister, my house could have fit in their living room. Like, this girl grew up in a pretty nice place, in a pretty nice environment. You want to talk about protective factors? This girl had them. How did she end up on the streets of Camden living in an abandoned house hooked on heroin? I said, I'm taking this into schools to show kids about drugs, and she pulled up her arm sleeves. She said, here, show kids this. I don't know how old she looks to you in this picture, but she's 22. And she died 9 months later of a heroin overdose. So I knew it wasn't a Camden and a Philadelphia problem. I knew it was a national pandemic. So I got in my car and I took off and I went across the country. I went to West Virginia, where my wife is from West Virginia. I married her anyway, but that's my only West Virginia joke. So I went to West Virginia and interviewed her brother, who had a out-of-control Percocet addiction. He was part of that OxyContin Express in South Florida, where he would go down there and see 30 pain doctors, go to 30 pharmacies and bring all those pills back to West Virginia, sell half, use half. And so I interviewed him, and then he interviewed his friend, and then his girlfriend. And it was I went to 40 states, and I interviewed 500 parents who lost their kids to an overdose of drugs. So I made a movie called An American Epidemic. And I do have some forms. If you're interested in downloading the movies, I'll have them at the end. So American Epidemic is 90 minutes. It's really didactic, and it's great. I interviewed treatment providers. I interviewed law enforcement heroes. I interviewed people in recovery. But I went to 40 states. I interviewed 500 parents who lost their kids to an overdose of drugs. And I am not just trying to stop this. One of my pet peeves, I don't even know if that's the right terminology, but one of my frustrations is we're measuring this thing in death. That's how we're measuring our pandemic. How many overdose deaths? Like, everybody waits with bated breath December 13th. How many overdose deaths happened the year before? First of all, it's way underreported, but there's a lot more to this than who's dying. That's not even, to me, that's not even the worst part of it. I mean, I don't know how many of you have ever been to nursing homes and seen 22 and 23-year-old kids that are vegetables sitting in rooms with beeping machines because oxygen was cut off to their brain for 16 minutes from an overdose. And their parents are going to spend the rest of their life tending to this child in a nursing home, right? To me, that's worse than death. But we're measuring this thing in overdose death. And we're talking about heroin and opioids when we should be talking about everything on this screen. Every single thing on this screen. We have all these. We're in a perfect storm of epidemics. All of these things in and of themselves are epidemics. Every single one of them. If you look at the numbers and you define an epidemic, all of these things on the screen are an epidemic. And we're not even talking about it. There's 140,000 Americans dying directly because of alcohol in America. That's double the amount of overdose death. There's 500,000 Americans dying from nicotine in this country every single year. Heart disease, #1 cause of death. Cancer, #2 cause of death. Do you know what the #3 cause of death in America is? Do you know, sir?
Okay.
Lung disorders, bronchial problems, COPD, CLRD. No one's even talking about it. I did some research. I went back and looked at the top 10 causes of death for 20 years. 10 years ago, the #7 cause of death in America was COPD, CLRD. 10 years ago, #7. Now it's #3. I said, why has it gone from 7 to 3 in 10 years? I'll tell you exactly why. Electronic cigarettes, vapes, and no one is addressing this issue. No one's talking about it. Just yesterday, the FDA put out the first warning to a company called Juul because our kids are vaping like crazy. This is an epidemic, and no one's addressing it. So why are we in this situation? Why are we here? Why are we in this epidemic? I could put a screen up with a bunch of reasons. There's a second screen, bunch of reasons, right? I could put a third screen, bunch of reasons. I could have 30 screens of reasons, right? I love this cartoon. The guy goes and visits his son in jail, and he says, I don't know where we went wrong with you, son, but his son is in the next cell. I'm over here, Dad. That's an out-of-touch father right there, talking to the wrong person in the jail cell. And a lot of people blame parents. If you're on social media or you're looking on Facebook, where are the parents? Where are the parents? I have seen the best parents in America bury their children, okay? I've seen I won't say worst parents because I don't know what a worst parent is. I've seen the most out-of-touch, most out-of-content parents bury their children. And every kind of parent in between, helicopter parents. I've seen single moms, single dads, married 50 years. There's no way to put your finger on this. It's happening everywhere. It's like beef stew. There's a lot of ingredients to this pandemic, and there's a lot of solutions too. So on this slide presentation on my website, there's a very in-depth report of the pharmaceuticals and how we got here and why it's going to get worse. It's going to get so much worse. There's a new report on my website too from CCHR, Citizens Commission on Human Rights. And you want to talk about psychotropics? We've had a 700% increase in ADHD diagnoses from 10-year-old children and younger in the last 7 years. Coincidentally, we've had a 700% increase in teen suicide over the last 10 years, and no one's talking about that either. We got 50 vets a day blowing their brains out in this country. And no one's talking enough about this. So I try not to put all of the blame in one place, right? But out of that pharmaceutical report, the CDC calls this an epidemic. The WHO is saying this is threatening the achievement of modern medicine. That sounds pretty serious to me. And prescription drugs are causing more death than heroin and cocaine combined, but because of the heroin explosion, which came after the opioid explosion, and now synthetics, heroin is getting up there. But opioids haven't slowed down. Opioid deaths haven't slowed down. Opioid deaths have slowed down in 14 states, but 12 of those 14 states have had increases in overdoses due to meth, cocaine, and other drugs. So the opioid deaths are slowing down in 12 states so far, 2017, but 14 states, but in 12 of those 14 states, the death is up because drug addicts have switched their drugs of choice. So, we eat 99% of all the hydrocodone in the world. We're eating 65% of all the Dilaudid in the world. We consume 80% of the world's oxycodone. I mean, we have 5% of the world's population and we're eating 80% of the world's pain medication because we don't want to be in pain as Americans, right? So, we've become a prescription drug culture. Now, in the year 2000, pain became the 5th vital sign. You used to go to the doctor, and the doctor or the nurse would say, how's your pain on a scale of 1 to 10? And you tell them. Then we went to this. Point to the face that represents your pain. Guess what face we pointed to the most? 10. Guess what face we pointed to the least? 0 or 2. Because if it was a 0 or 2, would we be at the doctor? No. So it was a 10. So Purdue Pharma said if they point to 10, it's 90 OxyContin. If the Eli said, if they point to 10, it's 60 Percocet. You see, opioid medication designed for end-of-life and cancer patients and hospice became wisdom tooth answers and rotator cuff tear answers and sprained ankle answers. I'm not making this up. This isn't my opinion. You can't argue with what's happening. Pain became the 5th vital sign. And at the very same time, our illustrious President Bill Clinton and our illustrious Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich got together and they put pharmaceutical ads on television. People say, where did this all come from? I'll tell you where it come from. I studied it for weeks and weeks and weeks. We're going to spend $9 billion this year on direct-to-consumer marketing to patients, right? We used to go to the doctor and the doctor would diagnose you, but now we diagnose ourselves off of a commercial and tell the doctor what's right for us. Have you seen this commercial where the opioid pill rides to the pharmacy with the girl in the convertible? Did you see that one? Hey, did you see this one where the guy's going, my doctor said, how long you been holding this in? Opioid-induced constipation, right? Maybe we're giving out too many opioids if we need OIC. How about this one where the girl can't get to sleep at night because she's tossing and turning and she gets up and takes two Lunesta. That's that wake pet that was dancing around her bed now becomes a sleep pet and cuddles up next to her. She gets up in the morning, hits her driveway and greets her neighbor, and the neighbor has a wake pet dancing with her wake pet. And what does that subliminally tell you? Everybody in the neighborhood's taking Lunesta to go to sleep, right? The third most abused pharmaceutical drug in America, sleep medication. She goes to bed that night and the narrator says non-addictive formula. That's what he says, but what do they show you while he says that? The Lunesta butterfly dancing over the girl's head. And what's the next thing you hear? Ask your doctor if this is right for you. Of course it's right for me. Didn't you see the commercial? There's a new depression commercial on TV right now, and it starts off like this. Your depression medication's not working? Don't stop taking it. Add this to your depression medication. How? Now we have a depression cocktail. Listen, I'm not a doctor. I don't even play one on TV, okay? So like, I have zero medical history experience. I don't give out medical advice, and I don't tell anybody to listen to me versus listen to their doctor. But maybe you should ask your doctor more questions, and maybe you should open up your ears and talk to your doctor about symptoms and diagnosis and everything, rather than you telling the doctor what you need. And we got to stop telling kids that prescription medication is safe. I don't think this is going to play. No, so oh, it will play. Look at this. I think. Will it? Is there a way to get the volume up? I don't think I can get the volume up. Is there volume on here? Is it all the way up? Did anybody see the new movie Reese Witherspoon, Home Again? You seen it? So I was forced to see it. Sometimes I have to go to chick flicks. But anyway, I was sitting in the movie. It was funny, but when this happened, I was floored. I want to share it with you.
If we could go over your schedule and talk about what's making you anxious. I don't want to do that, Doctor. Stupid exercises. Can't I just go on antidepressants like every other kid? Oh my God, Isabel, for the billionth time, you are not depressed. I'm positive. Please, Mom. I'm feeling exhausted, hopeless, anxious, and I don't enjoy the things that I once loved. Music, please. I'm not alone, Depression affects over 20 million Americans, and I'm an American, so...
Where are you getting this from?
The Zoloft commercial, obviously.
Now, hey, listen. I laughed just like you. And I wanted to take that little 6th grader in the backseat home. She's the most precious little child, right? And I laughed, and my wife laughed. And then we both looked at each other at the same time. I wish somebody was video recording this reaction. I just looked over at my wife, and she points to the screen, and I point to the screen at the same time. And I'm like, did you hear that? I used profanity. She didn't. I go, did she say that? So I got it and captured it and took the clip out, and I'll probably get sued by NBC Universal. We're brainwashing our children with media. We're brainwashing our children about marijuana, and we're brainwashing our children about nicotine. And these vapes are out of control. Does everyone know what a vape is? An electronic cigarette. Does anyone not know? Does anyone not know? I had a most beautiful man yesterday said, what's vaping? I was like, I want to be your grandson. Like, everyone knows what vaping is, right? Okay, I don't know if you really understand what's happening with it, but I'll just quick share with you. This was from a marijuana dispensary in Los Angeles about a month ago. They put it in a child-proof lock, because we don't want kids to... You see how hard that was to open, right? So here is the Pax, a Juul, a Sorin, lots of different names. This is an electronic device, okay, a vape, right? And the vape has cartridges. The cartridges were all had marijuana in it, wax marijuana. I didn't want to bring marijuana across state lines, okay? Because can you imagine that headline in the New York Times? Drug prevention advocate gets caught at LAX smuggling marijuana. That's what the, so here it is, it's $27, and that's what it is. There's the USB charger, so your kid can charge it just like their cell phone, right? And so, here's the device. The cartridge is this big, and it's full of nicotine, or 220. I gotta get the Juul. I'm gonna bring the Juuls with me too. Should have stole your Juul today. Stealing from a probation officer. No, no. So the cartridge is that small, and it's full of 220 puffs of nicotine, which is about a pack of cigarettes. Or it's full of THC, marijuana, wax. Goes right in the bottom of the thing, and the kid puts it up to the mouth, sucks it in, and they're high. Sucks it in, they take a hit like a cigarette. There's no lighting of anything, there's no lighters needed, there's no anything needed. This is the new device, and it's coming in all sorts of colors, and guess what else? It's flavored. It's flavored pineapple and coconut and strawberry and mango. Who's it marketed to? Juul, the biggest company that makes these, okay, they, in 2015, had 5% of the nation's market. Now they have 65% of the nation's market because they flavored everything, and what did they do? They targeted kids. I was in 4 high schools so far this week, and every single high school I was in, 95% of the kids raised their hand that they know another high school student that they're in school with that's vaping. 95% of the middle school kids are raising their hand that they know a middle school kid that's vaping. I'm telling you right now, it's not Michigan. It's every state in America. 30 to 40% of 6th, 7th, and 8th graders are using these devices. 50 to 60% of high school students are using these devices. The #1 cause of death in America is nicotine. I'm not trying to get off topic here. It's the #1 cause of death in America. It's the hardest thing to quit on earth. Nicotine is more addictive than heroin, okay? I know people who beat heroin and they cannot beat nicotine, okay? And now we're putting the most addictive, and even if you want to debate that, okay, let's say heroin, meth, nicotine. 1, 2, and 3, okay? Now we're putting nicotine into the brains of adolescents between the ages of 11 and 17. I'm telling you what's going to happen. We're going to have a problem. But not only that, not only addiction, not only they're going to move on to other drugs, because once you stimulate the brain, you need more stimulants, better stimulants, more potent stimulants to keep stimulating the brain. Because there's that tolerance level, that factor that settles in, and kids need more stimulant. You know, 10 years from now, between the ages of 21 and 27, mark my words, you can write today down, April 25th, this crazy nutty guy from New Jersey said this. 10 years from now, between the ages of 21 and 27, you're going to have a bronchial pandemic. You're going to have people dying of COPD at 27, 28 years of age. I promise you. And no one's talking about it. No one's talking about it. So, they say the number was 65,000, 2016. The University of Virginia said we're underestimating this by 25%. States are not counting all their overdoses. And it's really like 81,000. I'm telling you, 17's 100. My prediction, I made it in 2015. It's in a thing sealed in a jar. I'm opening up at 2021, December 15, 2021. I'm opening that jar up, and I'm going to see if it was 250,000. That's how many people I think are going to die from a drug overdose in 2020. I really believe it. So heroin's changed everything. It's cheap. It's everywhere. It's goes to the brain immediately. It's completely addictive. It's like no other drug. It's like I said, it's cheap and it's everywhere. Why will it get worse? PDMP. I'm telling you, Michigan, that's the best thing that they could have done. But I'm telling you, it was 7 years, 10 years too late. It's too late. Why is it too late? Same reason it's too late in New Jersey. I lobbied this man for 7 straight years to sign what Michigan just signed December 27th, I think he signed it, and it's actually not even going to go into full effect until June of this year, right? Which doesn't make any sense to me. Why? I lobbied him for 7 straight years to sign this legislation, and he finally did it February 15th of last year. But why won't it help? Because it is. These are fake pills. That's carfentanil, fentanyl. These are synthetics. Did you see the article 2 days ago? Did you see what happened in Illinois this past weekend? 184 people got synthetic marijuana and they were bleeding out of their noses and their ears and everything. 3 people died in Chicago from synthetic marijuana. This kind of stuff in marijuana. This kind of stuff in pills. Those aren't oxy-80s. Those are fake. Those aren't Percocets. They look pretty good, don't they? Those are fake. That's a fake Xanax bar. This stuff is being made by criminal syndicates, and they're ordering these pill press machines. I do it every couple of days. Go on Google and type in pill press machines and hit enter. You can order them from China. They'll send them right to your house by DHL. It doesn't make any sense. So these criminal syndicates are ordering this stuff, and they're making these fake pills. Fake pills. Can you imagine when these college kids that go out and buy Adderall so it'll help them with their midterms start buying Adderall that's laced with fentanyl? That's really fentanyl? What's going to happen? It's already happening. It's already happening in Florida. Look, that's 2016 fentanyl confiscations in America. This is a poison, right? A poison. So, this is my state of New Jersey, how the heroin exploded from 2010 to 16. Look how the fentanyl exploded. This is worse. Now 80% of our heroin in New Jersey contains fentanyl. And they're starting to see fentanyl and cocaine. So, it's not about the drug, it's about the brain. Let me see, real quick. This is I won't go into marijuana like I usually do, but I just want to touch on maybe 3 things in marijuana. This is the #1 image that pops up on Google when your child says, is marijuana more dangerous than alcohol? This is the #1 Google image that pops up. And I mean, it's ridiculous. We're telling kids that marijuana is no big deal. All the strategies of the tobacco industry was that deny the health harms, target the kids, attack public health, obscure the science, and form those political lobbies. Because once you own Washington, you own everything, right? That's what the pharmaceutical industry learned. They have 16 lobbyists for every member of Congress. Did you know that? Big Pharma is the largest lobbying in Washington, 16 to 1. So, let me see if it plays.
Yes or no? Do you believe?
All right. I'm going to play this real quick. In 1994, the tobacco industry were called to Washington, and the top 7 CEOs of the top 7 tobacco companies were called to testify about nicotine. And Congressman Wyden from Oregon asked them all one question.
No. Do you believe nicotine is not addictive?
I believe nicotine is not addictive, yes.
Mr. Johnston.
Congressman, cigarettes and nicotine clearly do not meet the classic definitions of addiction.
I don't believe that nicotine or our products are addictive.
I believe nicotine is not addictive.
I believe that nicotine is not addictive.
I believe that nicotine is not addictive.
And I too believe that nicotine is not addictive.
So 7 for 7, right? They all lied. Now look, that was 1994, not 74, 84, 94. That ship sailed already, right? But they all lied. It was proven later on that they all lied. They were all coached what to say. 6 out of the 7 said, I believe, so they didn't get in trouble. 1 didn't say, I believe, and he got prosecuted, by the way. But anyway, I made a little analogy between back then and today, the language of then, the language of today, and the advertisements of then and the advertisements of today.
We have to recognize the fact that the vast majority of people who use tobacco products don't fall victim to lung cancer with the use of the product.
Which that's not true. 3 out of 4 people who use it die from it.
A relatively benign substance that millions of adults in this country use responsibly.
Who's using a substance that doesn't kill, doesn't addict.
And whether it's aspirin or sweeteners or swordfish.
Ice cream is not good for you. Would you make ice cream illegal? That's kind of bad.
So we used to compare cigarettes to swordfish, and now we're comparing marijuana to ice cream. And maybe you'll eat more ice cream when you eat marijuana, right? I get it, but it's a problem. And it's not marijuana anymore. So real quick, just for 3-4 minutes, I want to show you something on marijuana. When I filmed American Epidemic, I found myself in Boulder, Colorado, and I interviewed a woman whose daughter died the night before commencement. It was one of the hardest interviews I ever had to do, and I had to clear my head. So I was walking down the city streets of Boulder, and I came across this store, MMJ Boulder, Medical Marijuana Boulder. And I go, what the heck is this? Medical marijuana in a store? I mean, I've been in head shops when I was a kid and saw the roach clips and the feathers and the hookahs and the bongs. So I walked in there, I thought I was in Nordstrom's. Like I thought I was in Macy's. I thought I was in Lord & Taylor. The chicest boutique I ever seen. And these 2 folks, the bud tenders, they're going to explain everything to me. The bud tenders, not the bartenders. And this guy's explaining to me all about the waxes and the liquids and the solvents and the cookies. And I go, wait a minute. This ain't marijuana. Yeah, this is marijuana, so I made a movie about it. It's on YouTube. I just put it on YouTube 2 weeks ago. I got tired of trying to find a distributor, so I put the whole thing on YouTube, and you can watch the whole thing right off my website, right off YouTube. You can watch the whole thing. I took that picture at the 420 festival. It was not a foggy day, by the way. It was not a foggy day. 15,000 kids in downtown Denver smoking weed. And some of the kids brought their little kids with them to the festival. They put their little 3 and 4-year-old kids up on their shoulders and walked them around the festival. One of the moms was so concerned about the profanity-laced lyrics on the stage that she sat her kids off to the side and put little earphones on. And I was intrigued. I'm like, what's the earphones for? She goes, don't you hear those lyrics? I don't want my kids listening to that garbage. You're walking them around in this. You're not worried about secondhand smoke or a contact high? And she goes, well, if they get a contact high, they'll sleep really good tonight. Are you the mom? Yeah? Okay. 8 a.m., 3 a.m., a 24-hour smoke fest. It was unbelievable. These kids were walking around smoking those 2.5-foot long joints. It was the celebration of the legalization of marijuana, and I was concerned. So I went to the medical marijuana dispensary. I was trying to buy medical marijuana. The guy goes, you can't, you need a medical marijuana card. So he says, just go downstairs and buy it. I go, no, I want medical marijuana. He goes, it's the same stuff. What do you mean it's the same stuff? Go downstairs, ask what their sativa of the day. I bet you it's called Tangerine Sunrise. So why would I get a medical marijuana card? I go, he goes, tax? Medical marijuana is 10%. Recreational is 37%. You mean to tell me the only reason people get medical marijuana cards is so they save 27% in tax? He goes, yeah, what'd you think it was? So I go downstairs and there it is, Tangerine Sunrise. 5%. That's marijuana. Super Gupta Kush, 21.5% THC. Girl Scout cookies, 18.2% THC. I bought a strain called Green Crack, 24.5% THC. I bought 80 ounces of marijuana that day. What happened? I didn't do that. Did I? What happened? I didn't do that. I swear I didn't. Maybe I did. Did I do that? I'm clicking back.
These are showing up, okay.
Oh. Alright, well, I hate you to look at that one, but let me just show you this chart.
Tell them about how it tested out.
What did you do? It said McKenzie died. Did someone turn it on?
I just swapped the HDMI.
So I tested all the products. Tangerine Sunrise, I tested, let me go back to that. So Tangerine Sunrise, the DEA tested all my stuff through the district attorney. Tangerine Sunrise, I bought 5%, it came back at 17.5. I bought Green Crack at 24.5, it came back at 36.8. And 13 of my strains contain mold, and 21 of my strains contain fungus and pesticides that have been banned by the Department of Agriculture. And I said, I don't get it. One of the biggest arguments that we're going to put it in stores is because drug dealers could put anything in their product. If we put it in a store and test it from seed to sale, everyone knows what they're getting. He goes, you should interview some testing labs. And I did. And they said between 20 and 25% of what's being sold in the store is being tested. And no one's considering that some of these dispensary owners maybe be getting their illegal marijuana from illegal grows and selling it like it's real. No one's talking about that. It's crazy. It's crazy. So here's THC. I want to share something with you, right? Here's THC, and here's medical component CBD, cannabidiol. I'm 100% in favor of cannabidiol, CBD. This is medical. Look at THC. From 1960 to 2011, we got it from 1 to 12%. We legalized marijuana in Colorado, and look what happened in 2 years. We went from 12 to 37. Okay, and that's not what I'm even concerned about anymore. This is marijuana. By definition, this is marijuana. Does that look like marijuana to anybody in this room? We've extracted THC out of the plant, put it into a wax and a shatter and an oil. And this was a picture I took over the display case in Breckenridge at a medical marijuana dispensary. Spicy White Devil, 89.7%. That's medicine. We've never tested that anywhere in the world. This is liquid THC for a vape pen. That's 87% pure, and it goes right in the vape pen, and we're selling this to children. We're marketing this to kids. All the marketing is being done directly to kids on these products. The CDC says 38.4% of high school kids are vaping. That's the CDC. That number is half what it really is, but even if they're right, that's 2015. Middle school kids, they say 13%, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. I'm telling you it's double that, but even if they're right, that's 3 years ago. So if 13% of middle school kids and 38.4% of high school kids are ingesting nicotine through a vape pen, this kid goes to me the other day, he doesn't have the nicotine in the vape. He just vapes the juice, so it's safe. It's safe. You're vaping a food additive. It's okay if it's in your food, I guess, but when you heat it up to the temperature it needs to be heated to in order for it to become into a vape, it becomes a VOC, a volatile organic compound. That's what puts people in your emergency rooms. VOCs are deadly. They're aerosols. It's like huffing paint. It's like huffing glue. It's like huffing dust off of your computer screen. These kids don't have any idea what we're doing, and I don't know why no one in this country is alarmed about this. The only ingestion method that's going up across the board for adults and kids, and this is how they're making it. They put these tubes in these big machines from floor to ceiling, and they blast butane and propane through that side, and what comes out this side is this. This is marijuana. This is butter, 84%. This is wax, 92%. That's shatter, 97% THC. And like I said, that's the ones I bought. Now there's videos on YouTube telling kids how to turn any e-juice V-pen into a THC marijuana pen, okay? And that's 100% pure THC crystal, sold in Seattle. 100% pure THC. And we're selling it in a store. You smoke that on a pipe. I don't understand why the government, state governments, and now we got legislators. Chuck Schumer introduced a bill on 4/20, April 20th, in Congress. He wants to pass marijuana legalization nationwide. You want to pass marijuana? Okay, I'm against it, but I'm not going to tell the adults what to do. But this is marijuana legalization. So this is not what America thinks is happening. And look, this is for your puppies. If your puppy's itching a little bit, he's a little bit rambunctious, jumping on the furniture, you want to calm your dog down, yeah, give him some of this. If your dog sleeps all the time, but you want to get him spunky, give him this. I turned all 3 boxes around, and they were all identical. I said to the guy, how do you know that it's going to work for stopping the itch or it's going to work for making him calm and quiet? He goes, well, you smoke weed, I smoke weed, we're going to have 2 different reactions. I said, what veterinarian company is testing this? Like, and I'm hoping people care more about their pets than they do about their kids. Like, that's what I'm hoping. Like, who's testing this stuff? So as perception of harm goes down, youth use is skyrocketing across the board. And I'm worried about the cognitive function of these kids' brains. Every addict I've ever interviewed between the ages of 18 and 27, 90% of them started with 3 things. All of my kids in the movie Kids Are Dying, they all started with the same thing. Nicotine, alcohol, and marijuana. It's the trifecta gateway. So the rest of the slides, as you can look at yourself, I have a lot of stuff from Colorado, some things that I went through. Oh, here, let me just share this with you. This is a Craigslist ad. We can ship to your door, or, I left the misspellings in there on purpose, you can pick it up and we will help you ship. That's right on Craigslist. Go on your phone, go to Craigslist Denver, that ad's there. This is Craigslist Los Angeles. He put this on Denver, his card's there. He's selling these cartridges and he's shipping them to you on, you order it online, or you order it right over the phone. Here's Craigslist from last week. Look, you could text the guy. You could text that number, hey, I'm in Sandusky, Michigan, I'm looking for a £1/4 pound. And he'll send it to you at UPS. This is against federal law, and no one is addressing it. No one. I won't play the whole video, but look at this. So here I am at Native Roots in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and it's very interesting because if you see on the sign right here, it says Native Roots gas and grass. So it's actually a gas station that you can pick up your gas, fill up your car, and then go in and buy some weed. So it's Native Roots, gas and grass. There you go, America. Welcome to Colorado. Welcome to legalization, gas and grass. So it's called the Feeling Station, okay? Not the filling, Feeling Station. And you can buy gas or grass or both. All the marijuana use in Colorado among adolescents is skyrocketing. Every measurement that's done by real legit people, okay, not these fake people the marijuana industry is paying to say there's no increase in youth use. I mean, if you believe that, I don't know what planet you come from. Like, if you believe it's as widespread as it is and kids aren't using more of it, I really don't know what to tell you. I was in Vassar, Michigan a couple weeks ago, and all the teachers like, and you could smell it on the kids. You can smell it on their clothing because all their parents are smoking weed. There's a medical dispensary in there. I go to the guy, I don't have a marijuana, Michigan driver's license yet. He's like, don't worry, I'll talk to the doctor. Cool, I get a medical card because I just moved to Vassar. Awesome. So I made the movie. It's going to really irritate you and bother you. And I address all the myths. Last thing, two things I'll leave with you is this. The Monitoring the Future survey from the greatest university on planet Earth, University of Michigan. And then the second greatest university, Michigan State. I'm going to stay safe in this room. 61.9% of 8th graders said they haven't done all three: cigarettes, alcohol, and an illicit drug. But when they survey 10th graders, it's only 38.9% that say no. And only 25% of 12th graders said no. That means 75%, 3 out of 4, our graduating high school seniors have done all three. Have drank alcohol, have used an illicit drug, mostly marijuana, or a prescription pill that's not prescribed for them, and cigarettes. And now they're adding vaping to this. And the National Survey on Drug Use and Health, if they don't drink and smoke between the ages of 12 and 17, and I expanded it to 11 to 18, they have the lowest use of marijuana and illicit drug use than anyone surveyed from 18 to 27. If they do both at that age, they have the highest. That's the key. That's the key. And that's what I'm trying to accomplish. So all the slides are available to you. I have tons of information. At the end, I have all these graphs, all these top 10 abused prescription and over-the-counter medications that you can look at and learn more, learn the nicknames that kids are calling it. The graphs start here, all across the country, how the trends have gone up. I just, instead of having to go look for it, I put it all in one place. I showed you how the opioid prescriptions increased across the country and how the need for treatment that matched overdose death, how fentanyl skyrocketed, and all the new trends for kids. Alcohol energy drinks, synthetic marijuana, synthetic speed, how benzos are being abused, how Adderall is becoming the drug of currency on college campus, how hydrocodone is being abused and used on oxycodone, and how our seniors are targeted, and then fentanyl, carfentanil, and the other poisons, and then treatment for opioids. So there's just tons of information that I wanted to put on there for you. And now what do? What are the solutions? Well, I have a whole list of them. And I got real in-depth on the thing. There's videos, there's links, there's everything. What can we do? Well, one of the things I had on there was a prescription drug monitoring program, like Michigan just did. And they're part of a program that talks to 46 states. So very, very great. Like I said, it should be a federal prescription drug monitoring program across the country, not just Schedule 2 and 3. We should have Schedule 4 drugs on there too. But here's all the solutions that I came up with. And on my website, there's how to really talk to kids, how to engage kids. That's the Search Institute I told you about earlier. Internal and external assets. You know that expression, there's no manual to being a parent? There is. This is it. My wife says it's a manual for building a husband, too. I don't know what that means, but internal and external assets. Phenomenal, from Search Institute. Also, you want to find out what's really happening with marijuana across the whole Rocky Mountain region, this report will show you. On my website, there's a lot of links to other websites, and on my website are these slides, and on my website is a curriculum for kids called the Success Curriculum, and it's all free. You can order more movies, you can download movies, the table talks are there. My new movie is called Higher Power, it comes out next month. It's about how Jesus Christ delivered me from my addiction, and about 50 other people across the country that found deliverance from addiction through spiritual principles. So I'd like to talk all day, but I don't want to keep you all. Thank you so much.